Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today for our webinar titled The Future of Public Affairs and Its Tech Landscape. My name is Kat Waddell, and I'm with the marketing team here at Phone2Action. And before we get started, I did just want to touch on a few housekeeping items. First, we are going to be live streaming the event using the hashtag digital advocacy. We invite you to follow along, contribute, and tag at Phone2Action on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Next, we are going to be recording this event, and we'll be sending the link to all registrants after the webinar is ended. And finally, after the presentation, we will have some time for questions. So to submit a question to us, please type it into the question box on your control panel. If you run into any technical difficulties during today's presentation, please contact me via the chat window and I will assist you. And now I'm going to turn it over to today's moderator, Will.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today as we discuss the future of public affairs and its tech landscape. Like Kathleen said, my name is Will Lopez, and I'm the Vice President of Customer Success at Phone2Action. I see a few folks that are still joining us. Thank you so much for taking the time today. Really do appreciate you listening in on this interesting topic. We have an exciting topic to discuss, but we have an even more exciting guests that are joining us today. And I'll let them introduce themselves. First, I'll let Brad from Edison Electric Institute introduce himself. Brad.
Hey, Will, thanks for having me. Hey, everybody. Brad Viator. I'm Executive Director of External Affairs at EEI.
Thank you, Brad, for taking time out today. We also are joined by Jenna, who's the Vice President of Customer Success at GovPredict. So Jenna, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. As Will mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Customer Success at GovPredict. I joined GovPredict in March, and for anyone on this webinar who's not aware, we are recently acquired by Phone2Action, which is very exciting news. So we're working jointly on bringing you the best single platform for public affairs and government affairs.
Awesome. We're so excited to have you, Brad and Jenna, join us today. And for those of you who don't know me, like I said, I'm the Vice President of Customer Success at Phone2Action. One thing I like to always tout, and I apologize for all the noise, I think we all can experience this. You either are going to hear dogs or kids or noise in the background. I'm pretty sure all of us experience that throughout the couple of months that we've been working from home. But I was a former client of Phone2Action, and this is so exciting, and it's great to have this topic because we have not only Brad and Jenna who are joining us from an amazing organization, an amazing platform, but this is actually the intersection of politics and technology. And I think it's great for us to actually talk a little bit about how this past year and looking ahead into 2021, the landscape is changing. And if you're not at the forefront and you're not using the best technology out there, you're actually doing a disservice for your supporters and your members. Kathleen, do you mind moving ahead? Thank you. All right, so what's our agenda today? So first, we're going to look at our current political outlook. I think all of us can agree that 2020 has been a very, very tough year, not only personally, but then also from an organization standpoint. We've all had to shift the way that we work, not only by using Zoom and actually connecting with folks using a lot more technology, but thinking outside the box and thinking, how do we take the work that is so traditional and incorporate that in a very digital landscape? And luckily, we have two amazing individuals who are joining us today that can help kind of share the way they approached it as well. The second item that we're going to talk about is that intersection of politics and technology and how using both in that intersection has really created more insight, but not more capability for us to engage our stakeholders and actually share their stories and make sure that we're connecting with them and mobilizing them on the issues that are so relevant. I think we all can agree that, just because COVID hit and we all went to work from home, that didn't mean that we had to stop actually talking with legislators, understanding what policymaking was happening in the states, at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level, and also mobilize our communities and our supporters. And so we'll talk a little bit about how technology is bridging that gap for a lot of folks. And then last but not least, please ask a lot of questions during this time. We have Edison Electric, we have Brad, who's going to be talking about how his public affairs program is using technology to push the envelope and actually move ahead and help them accomplish their goals. Feel free to put your questions in the Q&A section. Kathleen is going to go ahead and actually review those, and then we'll be able to share those at the end. But this should be an exciting topic. All right, let's go ahead to the next slide. All right, so Jenna said this, Phone2Action has acquired GovPredict. I think most of you can agree Phone2Action is the best in class advocacy software out there. Many organizations, hundreds of organizations, use Phone2Action today to mobilize their supporters and engage their stakeholders. We only went ahead and actually connected with GovPredict because they're the best in class in legislative tracking, data insights, and actually campaign insights as well. And we're super excited to have that partnership and bring a richer data, deeper insights to produce better outcomes for most of you. Now, one of the things that I'm really excited about with this partnership is that now more than ever, nonprofits, associations, companies, they need to stay on top of some of their, what's happening in the legislative developments and engage their stakeholders. You'll be able to use that by using Phone2Action and GovPredict. All right, we can move forward to the next slide. Okay, so what happened in 2020? I think we've seen this. One thing that we ended up doing is we published the State of Advocacy report earlier this year, back in October, not too long ago, where we actually reviewed what happened, and we took a step back and we said, okay, what happened in 2020 that really created this surge? Outside of the numbers here, 14 million actions between January and June, 12.6 million connections with elected officials, and 3 million new advocates, over the years. And I apologize for all the noise. This has been an incredible year for engagement. And I don't know if it's because people are at home and some of the items that happened this past year, but a lot of people had to figure out a way to connect with their mobilize their supporters and their stakeholders using digital technology. Digital advocacy surged because there's actually a new wave of individuals that are taking action. And we've been coining a term called the new citizen. And this new citizen is someone who is more engaged, more connected, and someone that actually wants to hear from the organizations that are pushing forward their causes and the issues that are important to them as well. If you haven't already, please download your copy of the State of Advocacy report in 2020. And just to kind of highlight, a piece of how critical that surge was this past year, if we move on to the next slide, we had over 52,000 people a day take action, and that's one every 36 minutes. That's 20,000 more than before the pandemic. Now, one thing that's incredible about that is that there were a lot of policy changes that happened in the beginning of the year when COVID hit and everyone's mandated to go back and work from home. And more than ever, I think organizations outside of having to focus on the realities of your funding might be cut, your team might get reduced, your organization goals still need to be accomplished. People leaned heavily on technology for that, and I think Phone2Action was in a really prime space for all of us to actually do that. Not only were people able to go ahead and engage their supporters through email, but they were able to use text messaging and cut through the noise through email in order to engage those advocates as well. One thing that we saw this past year that was actually really incredible is that organizations also used, and collected personal stories from their members. Now more than ever, it's important to share those stories. An organization like National Restaurants Association, we're able to collect over 100,000 messages, all personalized and stories about individuals that were impacted from the restaurants industry, and share those with lawmakers at the federal, state, and local level to ensure that those stories were heard and that there was support for that community as well. This year has been incredible, not only because of the surge, but also because of the adoption of technology as well. I don't know about you all, and Jenna and Brad, I'm pretty sure you all can agree, before the pandemic, a lot of folks just didn't adapt technology, or they used it as like a last resource in order to engage and mobilize their supporters. And one of the things that we've noticed is that, during the pandemic, now more than ever, not only did you have quicker adoption of the technology, but you also had a lot more success using the technology to do that. And so this past year has been incredible for many reasons, but one of the silver linings that came out of that is that adoption of technology and how it's changed the landscape going into 2021. And with that, we can go on to the next slide. If we look ahead into 2021, it's only going to get busier. I think all of us can agree. We're still working from home. We're still trying to figure out what's going to happen next. We have a new administration. We have a new Congress. There's a lot of policy changes and a lot of state legislative sessions that are starting up January 1st. One of the things that we're going to do is that we actually have a webinar that's coming out on December 15th, and please, you can join us. That'd be great, on hindsight for 2020, looking in the past. But we also have a webinar that's going to come up on the first week of January. We're going to talk about how to hit the ground running using GovPredict and Phone2Action, making sure that your advocates and your supporters are getting engaged now or in the beginning of the year to make sure that your organization is at the forefront of what these policymakers really should focus on for 2021. Not only is 2021 a very busy year because of all the changes that we have, but it's actually going to be, more lucrative for a lot of organizations who adopted technology early on this year or now this year, going into 2021. Like I said, most of us are still working from home in 2021, and policymaking probably isn't going to change as much from now until January or February, shoot, even March. So you can expect that the technologies that your organization are adapting, the emails, the SMS programs, the text messaging programs, the personalized stories that you've collected, the cooperation between marketing, communications, and advocacy and public affairs is now even more important to make sure that you get your message across to these new lawmakers. We're super excited, and we're in a very prime position because not only do many of our current clients, but then hopefully our future clients as well, can now benefit from using Phone2Action and GovPredict. I'm super excited to announce that we have someone like EEI or Edison Electric Institute, Brad, who actually uses both. And so if we move on to the next slide, I think it'd be great if we can talk a little bit about the new technology yields and insights and the capabilities. Now, GovPredict actually makes it a lot easier for us to not only get the legislative and regular tracking alerts at all levels, but you also get data and deeper insights on your advocates or even your supporters. They have this really strong feature called Moneyball, where you can actually get a lot of PAC insights and see where individuals have contributed their dollars to. And so if you mesh that together with advocacy, you can give them relevant topics to take action on. Of course, you want to be at the forefront. And as someone who used to do this work, there's nothing worse than not having the information or the alerts, immediately in your desk and then taking action too late. And so luckily with this partnership with GovPredict, we're now able to offer our clients a lot more of the alerting and monitoring, so that way you can take action a lot quicker and make sure that you're mobilizing your supporters before some of your competitors or even some of the organizations that are opposed to the policies that you're focused on. We really care about the relationships that you build. So not only do we care about the relationships that you have with your advocates and making sure that you're, sharing their stories and making sure that, the lawmakers are hearing what they have to say, but we also care about your own team's relationship with stakeholders within the different levels of Congress and their staff. And so with, GovPredict, now we're able to go and actually bring you a lot more stakeholder management and make sure that your programs are as robust as they need to be. Now, without further ado, I do want to go into the Q&A session that Jenna and Brad have. So Jenna, I'm going to pass it over to you with the next slide.
Great. Thanks, Will. Lots to talk about there, and a lot that you brought up with the future of advocacy. Brad, just to start off, wondering if you might introduce your role and your team a little bit. I know that you lead external affairs, and lots of different organizations are structured differently in terms of government affairs, government relations. And what struck me in talking with you is how wide your team's purview is. Can you tell us a little bit about what you work on?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jenna. Thanks for the opportunity, everyone. So external affairs at EEI is a mishmash of a bunch of different things. We have the sort of core, and the way we were built was to do state government relations, so interaction with all the state policy makers. We've expanded that into local government relations as well. We have the political affairs, corporate social responsibility, and PAC function that exists within my external affairs portfolio. We do labor engagement, we do minority and low income engagement as well. But one of the practice areas that's probably grown the most over the last few years is we have a fully integrated public affairs firm internally within external affairs. So we are going out and working with EEI members, all the investor-owned electric companies, and helping them build campaigns to be successful legislatively. And it's state, it's local, but it's also at the federal level. So through the public affairs function, we really touch all levels of governance as we advocate on behalf of policies that make the most sense for our customers.
Makes sense. And if you could go to the next slide, please. One more kind of intro question here. You have a lot going on any given day, and you need to react very quickly. Can you tell us about how you integrate the various tools and technologies that EEI uses in your daily work?
Yeah, for sure. So let me start a little bit and kind of go back a bit further and talk about conversations that I had probably 4 years ago with Jeb Ori, the founder of Phone2Action, and then similar conversations that I had with Emil over at GovPredict. The thing that I told both of them, and really anybody who would listen in this whole ecosystem of technology, is that you've got this whole world of technological products that are supposed to make my life easier. They're supposed to allow the full-time employees on my team to focus less on mundane details and be more creative and be able to work and be more productive. The problem with this ecosystem is that you have all of these products that are adjacent to one another, but not entirely overlapping. So I operate in a world where at any given moment, I might be utilizing 4 or 5 different tools that do things that are pretty close to one another. And there's like a particular function that each one of these tools has that I really need, but I probably only use it for that one thing. So when I think about this marriage of GovPredict and Phone2Action, I think about the fact that this is the beginning of the consolidation that's necessary in this space for people like me to be successful, right? Like I'm the person internally, I come out, I'm the talking head. I know roughly what's going on in my department, but I have such a broad sort of area of responsibility that I can't be focused on the details. So I need a place that I can go that can get me up to speed on what's going on all the time. My team can be focused on the 2030, I think earlier this year we were operating in about 40 states on the public affairs side of the equation, and we're probably tracking 500 or so pieces of legislation while doing it. We need a place that can really consolidate all of this information that and can keep the team up to date with who's doing what and when. And that's sort of on the state legislative side of the equation. That's how we've utilized the GovPredict function. On the public affairs side of the equation, we use the Phone2Action platform every single day on these campaigns, whether we're sending text campaigns, email campaigns, whatever it is. But that half of my team, the public affairs side of my team, is not integrated with the state legislative side of my team. And they're working together hand in glove. And so the thing that I've really been seeking for 5 years is a way to really bridge all of the team members together and all of the products that I'm utilizing into one sort of single sign-on kind of experience. And my hope here is that with this merger, we'll really start to see a lot of that functionality come together. Because for me, I don't really care where the challenge to my member companies arise. It could be in the state legislature, it could be at a local city council meeting, it could be at our public regulatory commission, it could be in the U.S. Congress, right? They're all threats that sort of have impact on my customers' ability to do business. So like, I need a home where I can integrate and sort of like centralize all of the projects that I'm working on. And until now, I've kind of like operated in this world where I need consultants to teach me how to use the 30 different pieces of technology that are required for me to achieve an outcome. And that's just not efficient. And, I guess that's the main reason that I feel so passionate about the fact that this consolidation is finally beginning to occur, and I can start to tell my team that you're going to have to occupy less of your brain space trying to remember 30 different passwords, and you can spend more of your time like doing work and delivering results for your clients.
Very helpful. Thanks for that overview. Can you tell us a little bit about the experience of technology adoption? I know Will mentioned in the beginning some companies are a bit slower to adopt, others are fast adopters, trying all the technology on the market. Can you share your experience with EEI technology adoption and how your teams are utilizing the tools?
Yeah, I'd say we're in the early adopter phase. When new products come online, we're figuring them out. And the thing I tell my members all the time, they ask me about technology and they ask for recommendations, and they'll do a side by side, right? They'll say, "What do you think? Should I get GovPredict or should I get FiscalNote or Quorum? Like, tell me the differences, right? Walk me through it." So because I get those questions all the time, I feel as though it's important for me to understand all of the features of all of the technologies, because in fact, I'm guiding clients through these decisions, and I don't want to give them bad advice, and I don't want them to think, I'm not helpful because I gave them that bad advice, right? So that's the reason that we're an early adopter, because so many of our members are utilizing these tools and they're kind of depending upon us. So therefore, we need to, get deep and really understand how that works. But I guess one of the problems with being an early adopter is that I tend to get engaged with products or with companies and products like in the beta phase. So in a lot of ways, I'm helping companies sort of develop their product in real time, which I think is useful for the company, but sometimes it creates some pretty real headaches. But I think it's one thing that I've appreciated about both GovPredict and Phone2Action is their ability to, both of your willingness, I guess, to have a conversation about what my needs are and to figure out how the heck we can get there together. It's usually me making the case and saying, if you build this product and make it work for me, you can sell it to all these other trade associations, I promise. And you guys are sometimes like, well, yeah, and then other times you're like, Brad, you're making us spend a bunch of money. It didn't make any sense. But anyways, nonetheless, I appreciate the opportunity to have open communication about that.
Brad, just really quickly, I think one ROI that a lot of our clients or future clients don't really talk about is the time aspect of this. And in the previous slide, you have over 100 campaigns that you need to launch and everything. How much time do you think you'll be able to save, or even just by adopting technology in the past that you've been able to save? I mean, like, must have been hundreds of hours. And is that communicated to your team and also communicated when you're trying to make the case for being an early adopter of some of this technology?
The case I would make is like, yes, I'm saving a lot of time, but there's still a lot of work to do. And I know I've told you this before, Will, and Jenna, you as well. I think there's even greater opportunity to provide product and service that will totally save time and can lead me to a world to where I just have one enterprise level product, as opposed to I'm still operating with three, actually four, if you think about it. So to me, we're in this period where savings are beginning to be realized, but until we see the accelerant of what we're seeing in this merger, and as you spread more into regulatory and as you start to offer services on the communication side of the equation, that's when we're going to get to a place where my team can just work and we'll just have the Phone2Action window open all day long. And it's just an integrated part of all the work that we're doing, and really bring to the GR world what Salesforce brings to the corporate world. And that's kind of how I think about where we can ultimately go.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Very helpful. If we could shift on that subject to the next slide, please. Speaking of one of the tools that I know you're using, we work very closely, GovPredict works very closely with EEI, working with your PAC donations and donor insights. One of the tools that GovPredict provides is called Moneyball, and this is our database of all political contributions by anyone, individuals, corporates, or PACs for the last 20 years. And I know that your team is logging on pretty much every day into Moneyball and taking a look at those individual insights, whether it's to raise more money for the PAC, to prep for your PAC events. Can you tell us a little bit about how EEI is using Moneyball?
Yep. So I'll start by saying that, and I think Andrew Behringer's on the line. I don't know if Moneyball is what sold me on GovPredict, but it probably was, just because the way I think about it, a lot of the legislative tracking products and tools are similar, and it's kind of like a necessary piece to get in the door with organizations like mine. But the Moneyball thing was just a crazy differentiating factor. EEI's Power Pack only has 267 eligible donors, so we don't have a very big universe of people from which to raise money. We have an $800,000 pack, which is pretty good considering the the few people that we can access. But what Moneyball allows us to do is get strategic insights and figure out who has room to grow in their contributions to the Power Pack. So for example, we could look up Brad Viator. You could look me up in Moneyball and you could see how much money I contribute politically in any given cycle. And you might learn that, all right, well, Brad has all these kids. He doesn't have any extra money. He's not the person that we need to think about to increase our contributions. But I might look someone else up and learn that they contribute $15,000 an election cycle. And they're only giving me $500 for the Power Pack. That insight allows me to sort of make a call to that person and say, hey, I saw you gave 500 last year, but you just wrote, max out checks to these 4 members of Congress. We're hosting an event for this other member of Congress that you like. Why don't you write me a bigger check and make that event more successful? So we use it for intelligence. We also use it for a different type of intelligence. So let's say a new member of Congress is coming on to the Energy and Commerce Committee, a committee that we care a whole heck of a lot about. And so we want to do a fundraiser, a sort of bundle event across the industry for this individual. We'll dig into Moneyball and figure out who the companies were, our member companies that were giving money to that member of Congress when they were on TNI, before they joined Energy and Commerce. And so we'll go out and make those individuals the kind of co-hosts for our events to help us just maximize the sort of like financial impact that we're having. It's a incredibly useful insight, and frankly, like it's probably something I could figure out through open secrets, but it would be an enormous amount of work. And you just integrate it right there into the platform. And that's why Caitlin and Maddie on my team are in there all day, every day. She texted me today. She said, I'm going to join the webinar. If you want to learn the myriad ways I use Moneyball, please let me know. So but you've certainly got a happy customer on that side.
That's great. Great to hear. And hi, Caitlin. If you're watching, I know that she's provided us a lot of feedback on how she uses Moneyball and how it's helped particularly in those events that you all plan. We've got a question from the audience here. It seems like more of a question for Will and me. How will Moneyball integrate with Phone2Action? Will advocates then have donor information next to them? The short answer is yes, there will be integrations. We're pretty excited about the possibilities of integrating GovPredict and Phone2Action. And certainly this is a particular use case, which is that you have all of this data on your people, your advocates in Phone2Action. And then you have all this data on people's giving in GovPredict. So yes, happy to talk about the possibilities to integrate those two types of data, but certainly it's something we're very excited about and seemed like a natural place to start for the two of us. Great.
I see a question higher up on this thing. I guess it's for me, about the utility market under the Biden administration. Do you mind if I address that one?
Absolutely. Do you want me to read the question out?
Yeah, please.
Question from the audience here. What's your projection for the utility market under a Biden administration? More or fewer legislative issues? And will that accelerate an investment in new technologies to stay on top of everything?
Oh, yeah. All right. So here's the first thing you got to figure out. Is there going to be more policy or less policy in a Biden administration? I think you have to wait until January 5th to see what happens in the US Senate before we really get a strong understanding of what's going to happen legislatively. But as a practical matter, we expect a ton of action on the administrative side of the equation coming out of the Biden administration, particularly at EPA, Department of Energy, Interior, John Kerry being named this new, international climate czar. I think we're going to see a lot of action out of those organizations. And, technology will certainly play a role in getting us up to speed and kind of being able to get into the details on the administrative side of the equation. On the legislative side of the equation, I think I've told Will this before. If I can't see legislation in the Congress moving, I really need to do something else. Like, those things move at such a glacial pace, and it's a big freighter turning, that, I don't know that technology is really the thing that's going to help me figure out what's going on in that legislation. I'm going to have to do the hard work of reading the bills themselves and meeting with staff. But the thing that technology can do, since we're coming at it from so many angles, is we can utilize the CRM that Phone2Action has, so we can go in and start logging all the different communications we're having with particular members of Congress to ensure that our teams are integrated and on the same page. There's so many touch points with Congress and with the administration within my organization of 180 people that it's critical that we be aligned and aware of the other discussions that are going on.
Absolutely, very helpful. I know a lot of people on this call are prepping for 2020 run right now. We've got a new Congress in addition to a new administration, and we've also got new state legislatures in nearly all of the 50 states who are going to be in session in January, February. What advice do you have for maybe others on this call or for your team in prepping for the completely new landscape in 2021?
Man, let's see. What advice do I have in preparing for this entirely new world that we're facing? I sort of the general piece of advice I would give is, make sure you were nice to all those people before, when they were in those private sector jobs before they jumped into this administration. I'd argue that, we need to be you need to be focused on the sort of task at hand and the job that that you're trying to complete here, fully understanding and appreciating that your business is going to continue on, or your nonprofit, whatever the heck it is, irrespective of who's in charge politically. And so this is the opportunity to reflect and figure out what parts of your business align with those that are in leadership, and to make sure that you're prioritizing those things in conversations. And I feel very fortunate for the client that I have, because we do very well in progressive administrations, because we're focused on the climate change, investment in renewable energy. Those are the things that I'm going to be talking about as I engage with a Democratic administration. And then on the Republican side of the equation, I'm able to focus on the fact that we're employing a boatload of people, we contribute locally to the economy, and we're enormous sort of like taxpayers and revenue raisers. You need us as an engine to keep that economy rolling. So I think the sort of introspection you should be doing is figuring out where the areas of alignment between your organization and these policymakers are, and then saying it out loud, and doing it in not just out loud via press release, but kind of putting some of that narrative out there in social media and everything else, running some campaigns that are talking about the things that align with the folks that are in power.
Brad, we got a question here that's actually a good segue into it, which is, what tactics work well in 2020 that you'll be repeating in 2021? And or are there new tactics you're hoping to test out, especially with the new kind of integration with GovPredict, Phone2Action and GovPredict?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that we launched very early on in the pandemic, I think we drew a conclusion that you talked about, Will, early on, was that as everybody's sitting at home, they're consuming a boatload of content. and they're consuming it differently because everybody's bored. There are no distractions. Like, what else am I going to do? I might as well get better at my job, or dig into a rabbit hole in Wikipedia. So one of the things that we found early on is that we had a particular message that needed to be delivered in and around the electric sector in COVID, and we had this huge audience. We just needed to figure out how to deliver it. And so we launched a podcast. We started that thing back in April, I believe. We've hosted 19 episodes so far, just talking about particular issues that are really important to our industry, doing it in 15 to 20-minute chunks. And then in effect, we're a publishing company, right? So we started pushing that content out to universes that we thought that we were trying to impact. We started doing some pretty interesting things around promoting those podcasts and kind of pushing it out via text message through things like Phone2Action. We'd send links to folks that exist within our universe and ask them to check out the conversation we just had on clean energy or on access to PPE or whatever the issue was, and really doing a lot of targeting that sort of message distribution. In 2021, we plan to really expand upon this publication platform that we've built based in and around the podcast, where we're going to take the conversations in the podcast, and then we are going to write follow-up stories that will live on our website, which is fueled by Phone2Action, where we can, really start to just build kind of, messaging channels and conversation channels, and figure out a bunch of different ways how to reach an audience on a particular topic, and frankly, throw a bunch of spaghetti against a wall and see what happens. So I think that's one area where we'll be really trying to expand our use and utility in 2021. And then also, I just want to get better at text targeting and figuring out like what actually works well, like what types of messages are best delivered via the texting platform versus email versus everything else. So, getting smarter, I think, is a big thing, and then also figuring out how to connect legislation to news story to advocacy campaign. I want to build sort of continuous strings between the three things.
Very helpful. I know that's a lot of the integration between Phone2Action and GovPredict. We have a question from the audience I'm going to summarize here, asking about how GovPredict and Phone2Action helps with integrating the balance of issues at federal level and the different states. Brad, you mentioned a feature of GovPredict before that I'll talk just a bit about for the audience, and then maybe you can describe a little bit about how EEI is using it. So GovPredict has a feature called Activity, and this is essentially shared workspaces across your team. So you can communicate with each other, email each other, tag each other on bills, regulations that interest you, so that if you see a new bill that comes in and super important, can't miss it, you can let your colleagues know immediately and elevate the priority. And similarly, when you meet with a member of Congress, or a state legislator, you can log that meeting, and your colleagues can add comments or tag you for follow-up. So this helps a lot, I think, with management, with our clients' management of federal and state issues. And Brad, you mentioned that EEI is using this. So I was wondering if you could give us a little insight about how that helps you balance the different issues you have.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's a central place for folks that are interacting with particular legislators or policymakers to log those interactions. It's also a central hub for individuals who are working on policy pieces to kind of attach it into that platform. It's like the beauty of a CRM brought to the work that we do every day. I mean, that's really in effect what it is. It's only as good as the inputs. That's the thing I'll caution you on. Like it is a great tool, but you've got to convince all the people on the team to use it, or it's just not as useful as it could be. So as you're thinking about really developing a CRM program, I think you want to get buy-in up the chain of command. You want folks at the top of that leadership structure to sort of suggest that, hey, this is a key performance objective for you. This is something that you need to do so that we can understand the work that you're getting done. If you have that buy-in from up the chain, I think you'll see a lot of utilization of the tool, and it'll just create more awareness. And then you can sort of use that CRM to produce reports that can be given to, your clients or bosses or whatever, to really show the impact that, the department is having. And in our world, we're usually cost centers. We're not usually revenue generators. And I think it's important to be able to show that motion and to be able to show the sort of like real hard work that you guys are doing that can be captured on paper and can sort of be given some sort of metric.
Very helpful. Question for Will. What integrations does Phone2Action have? You mentioned Salesforce, Nation Builder. Can you speak to Phone2Action's integrations?
Yeah, definitely. We have several integrations, and most of our clients actually use that. Some of our primary integrations are with Salesforce, Nation Builder. We also have integrations with, EMS systems or email providers like MailChimp, Constant Contact. And then, of course, we have, some of these customized integrations that we do to make sure that the data is flowing back and forth. Corey actually asked us a question about NGP van, and if we integrate with them. We don't integrate with NGP van, but we have transferred information from Phone2Action to that system before, and vice versa. We can connect offline. I'll reach out to you directly, Corey. But one of the things that's really great about this is that, for such a long time, and like I said before, I was a client of Phone2Action and I came on board, and part of the role that I used to have is I used to have to jump into these state capitals and, sort of get hundreds of family members out in front of the Capitol protest and then get people to take action. And so one of the things that we used to do when it came to our data is that, you activate them and then you engage them, and then it kind of just goes off to the wayside until you're ready. Brad, you have a very robust system and process at EEI. You use several technology platforms. You engage folks through email, you engage folks through advocacy. You see an alert that comes up that's really important to Edison Electric, and you go, okay, we got to activate folks. One of the things that we go into 2021 and we always tell our clients is get ready and make sure you're keeping your advocates warm. In your shop, how are you keeping your advocates engaged and making sure that you're not overloading them with a lot of information? A lot of our clients on the call now would be interested to hear from you on that.
Yeah, I mean, the way that we do advocacy is every action includes a call to action. We don't do a lot of like FYI type of stuff to clog inboxes. And the reason we do it that way, and it could be a simple action, right? It could be sign a petition. And that's a lot of what we're doing right now as we, sort of await legislative sessions to open at the state level and at the federal level, is we'll push out messages. For example, one of the campaigns we're working on is the LIHEAP campaign. It's a low-income heating assistance program that we've been working on for a while. And so I've got a petition that's been live for a couple months, and I will push out outbound messages to people and tell them that, hey, we need to make sure and tell Congress that more LIHEAP funding is needed because a bunch of people are out of work and can't pay their electric bills or their gas bills. This is an area where we need some attention. So that's the type of stuff that we're doing right now. We learned a long time ago, early on in our advocacy game, that if we just started educating and didn't attach calls to action, our metrics wouldn't make any sense, and our CPAs would be through the roof. Once we kind of made a pivot and really began to realize that calls to action have to be attached to all of our communication, we were able to build a much more, I guess, robust and diverse program. So I'd recommend similar actions to other folks, and it really doesn't matter. It could be a simple ask, like share your what's the coolest way you've used electricity in 2020 as you work from home. It can be literally anything, but make sure there's an ask attached to it.
Yeah, that's really great, Brad. As a follow-up question to that, one question we hear a lot from, as we're looking at new clients or we're working with our current clients, and I think this is actually a really great conversation, is what's your key metric that you look at that you're like, I am successful or I'm not successful? Is it growth of advocates, growth of connections, number of campaigns you launch, or when you launch those campaigns? I think that'd be great if you could share that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think all of the data that you talked about is important and it helps us figure out correlation, but I only care about my client winning. I don't care about anything else. I need to understand what my client's objective is, and I need to figure out how to use all of the tools at my disposal to help them be successful. And I can run correlations on the back side of it once I've been successful and I'm doing an analysis of a campaign to see what factors sort of contribute to success and try to replicate those factors as I build a new program. Those are great learnings as I try to figure out how I'm going to engage in the next fight and the topic that I've never seen before. But for me, it comes down to the core issue of, did the client get what the client needed? And if the answer is no, I may have learned a lot along the way, but it's kind of all for naught. So I'm more thinking about these data sets as it relates to correlation as opposed to causation.
That's
Perfect.
helpful.
Thank
And
you.
similar along those lines, a lot of clients ask us both, I think, Will, what they can do to make their campaigns more successful. One thing we talk about a lot is the ability to personalize or customize your campaign. You mentioned you ask your advocates things like, how have you used electricity? Can you talk about those types of personalizations or customizations or anything else you use as tools to get your messages heard?
So sorry, I was being yelled at by someone in the house. So I had to let them know that I'm here in front of my bookshelf with no books. I'm apologizing that we just painted the bookshelf and I haven't put my books up yet. But when you started talking about personalization and making it real, there are a couple of things that we've done over the years that have been successful. I think one of my favorite ones, I love doing giveaways. So sometimes our calls to action are actually giving people something, and they can only participate and be entered for this giveaway by posting a photo on Facebook or on Instagram or whatever. We did a holiday lights competition a few years ago on Instagram that turned out pretty well. And essentially what we said is, hey, be entered into a drawing for this new iPad. You enter into that drawing by showing us how you utilize holiday lights, right? And so the key thing here, and you see this type of marketing a lot in consumer brands. They do this a lot, right? Like share my company, like the thing that we posted, and you'll be entered to win some of our product. We've started to apply some of those types of tactics in our advocacy, and so it's just saying, hey, go ahead and follow us on IG, or like our Facebook page, and then post a photo of yourself. We'll give you something for it, and we get people that kind of get a little bit more excited about it. And then when we identify a winner, we will build essentially a week's worth of campaign material around that winner, and we'll go back and we'll do an interview with the winner, and just try to publicize them a little bit. I think that's one of the ways that we've been successful and been able to have some fun. And that's also an activation. Remember, I said everything's got to have an activation in it. That in and of itself is an activation. It doesn't always have to be about policy.
Absolutely. Got another question here. What advice do you have for members who have had budget cuts in 2020 and they're going into next year? They want to advance their programs and adopt new technologies, but they're thinking about the impact of 2020. What advice do you have for them?
I mean, look, I operate within a pretty fixed budget every year, and so what I end up doing when I'm trying to make a case and figure out how to utilize new technology is, one, kind of understand the sort of the various technological options that exist. and what the sort of like baseline need is. Like, what's the absolute one that I must have? And then to do it, what I'll usually try to do is cut within my existing budget somewhere around half the cost of that product. I'll make some cuts otherwise on half the cost, and then I'll go in and make a case for the other half, kind of based upon this particular thing that could be delivered. I'll use the Moneyball example as a pretty good tool to consider here, right? Like we've integrated, or we've increased our pack receipts. I don't know, but like for our pack, I think we're up. First year we used it to 418,000 on an annualized basis, which is up about $25,000 year over year in just one year of usage. So I would essentially go out and say, hey, I'm going to take on this P2A product because it's got this Moneyball thing that will help me raise more pack dollars. So it will more than offset the kind of cost that will be required for me to pursue this product. And I already made these cuts internally within my budget to make up the rest of the difference. So that's kind of how I approach it, is doing a little bit of creative accounting.
Very helpful and good to hear, because we're always looking for that return on investment in Moneyball as well. We're coming up on time, a few minutes left. One last question, and this one's from Will. What is one item you would like everyone on this call to walk away with as we wrap up the year and get ready for the busy year that will be 2021?
The one thing I want people to take away from this conversation and thinking about technology and tools are that technology is not a replacement for sort of individuals and hard work. Technology in ones and zeros can be utilized to take the mundane part of the work away and allow you and your teams to be more creative. So as you're thinking about the integration of these tools, like, these tools might be able to prevent you from, hiring some low-level analyst over the near term, but they're also going to make your high-performing members of your team even better. And so I think, or I challenge you to think about technology utilization that way, as sort of a necessary piece to make your high performers perform even better.
That's great. And if we might add on to that question and share some items that we'd like everyone to come away with. For me, when I talk to our clients each day, and I spend my days pretty much all day talking to GovPredict's clients, which is wonderful, what I hear over and over is that any tool should help you save time, save money, or show your accomplishments, especially in government relations, where it's not often that you can have a legislative win that's really public and visible and maybe gets as much credit as other parts of the organization. Having a tool that can show what work your team has done is really helpful. And bonus if it's a tool that's also going to save you time and save you money at the same time. So as I think about the value that GovPredict and now Phone2Action as well bring to our clients, it's really kind of making that integrated case that you're showing your results of your team's hard work, and not to mention saving your team time as well.
And I'd like to share one last item as well. I mean, as we kind of wrap up our webinar, and thank you, Brad and Jenna, for being a part of it, is that we saw at Phone2Action that the clients who did not have a foundation when COVID hit and everyone was mandated to work from home and technology was getting ramped up, they actually lagged behind several months. And the folks who actually had that foundation, they had an SMS program, they had an email program, they had a campaign program, they had engaged and kept their advocates warm. They were contacting members of Congress. And like Brad said, they had a call to action and they were engaging their folks with it. They saw a return on investment of over, 10 times of what they've had. They saw hundreds of thousands of people take action in response to what was going on. And so, and with that, Brad, I can't iterate that enough, what you just said, right? Like, not only should we kind of give you equity in both GovPredict and Phone2Action for all the amazing ideas you've given Jeb and Emil, but we really appreciate the true partnership that you've had with both organizations throughout the year. And we really do wish you the best of success for next year. And your insights into this has been spectacular. And I think it's really great to see the organization actually, going ahead with the technology and adapting it, but also focusing on your client and making sure that they win at the end of it all. So Brad and Jenna, thank you so much for joining us today. We have no more questions. We'll stay on for a few minutes if they are, but really appreciate you sharing your insights, Brad, Jenna, your position on from GovPredict's point of view. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We're going to have this recording, and I think there might be a wrap-up slide that we have here, Kathleen, if you mind sharing. If you have any more questions, we're going to share the webinar with everyone who's attended today. If you have any more questions, please join us. Come on to our chat or even ask one of us, and then you can always visit phone2action.com and get more information on the integration that we have with Phone2Action and GovPredict. Thank you everyone for joining us. Really appreciate it.
All right, thanks everybody.